Good afternoon. Today marks the 9th reduction in the official cash rate since interest rates peaked in 2024. And what we can see in today's outlook from the Reserve Bank is that clearly those lower interest rates are now flowing through into a stronger economy. The Reserve Bank is confidently forecasting that next year will be a year of lower inflation and higher growth. That's good news for New Zealand households because that means more New Zealanders will have the opportunity to get ahead, to find work and opportunities. It's also positive to note in today's update that we're seeing a very high number of first home buyers entering the housing market, the highest number in several years, which again reflects that with lower interest rates, housing has become more of an affordable option for many New Zealanders. I'm very happy to take your questions. Well, what the Reserve Bank forecast very confidently in today's update is lower inflation next year and stronger growth. And what that means is fewer price rises for New Zealanders across the economy, and it means more opportunities for businesses and workers alike. And clearly what the Reserve Bank is saying today is that they're seeing stabilisation. They're not forecasting that significant additional reductions in the interest rate will be required. Instead, what they're forecasting is that this could potentially be the bottom of the interest rate reduction cycle, which would align with the view that we've reached the trough in the economy and we're now on the up.
And it's disappointing that it doesn't appear to be that this is no further cuts.
Well, that's obviously a decision for the Reserve Bank to take within their mandate. What they are clearly forecasting is inflation coming down further. That's good news. They're forecasting that that will happen with rising growth and with interest rates being maintained at a very low rate. So those three things together, I think, are positive news for New Zealanders, because what is the recipe that leads to people feeling better off? It's low inflation, it's low interest rates, it's higher growth. Those are the three things we've been working very hard for as a government, and the Reserve Bank is certainly saying that's what they see ahead of New Zealand. Well, I'd be very reluctant to use that phrase when I am acutely conscious that many New Zealanders are continuing to do it tough, and I know that many New Zealanders would have liked this recovery to come sooner. There is no question that New Zealand has been through a very difficult time economically, but what I do see in today's data and these independent forecasts is very solid basis to think that the growth is ahead of us and better times are ahead of us. And that's what we have consistently said as a government. If we fix these basics, if we get inflation under control, if we get interest rates coming down, we will recover growth. And there are a number of positive things across the economy that are leading a consensus of forecasters to say that they see next year as a year for stronger growth. They see rising exports, they see investment in productive projects, they see more job creation for New Zealanders. That's what I want for our economy, so I'm delighted to see it reflected in today's monetary policy statement.
That rise in inflation was up to 3% attributed to food prices and petrol prices. What are you doing in those specific areas so that families are not going to be exposed?
Well, on petrol prices, I'm delighted that our government stopped the petrol price tax increases which were proposed by the previous government. We put a halt to those on coming into government, and we removed the Auckland regional fuel tax. If we hadn't taken those steps, there's no question petrol prices would have been higher and petrol price inflation would have been higher. On food prices, what we have seen is elevated rates of global food price inflation, which has had an impact here in New Zealand, and we're already seeing that those prices are coming down again, and I would hope to see that reflected in the New Zealand rate of food price inflation.
On petrol prices, so you want to put them up by 12 cents in 2027. Does this give you any thought of maybe making any changes to that?
Well, what today's forecast shows is that in 2027, New Zealand will have had some healthy growth occurring in the economy for several months, and it will also be experiencing low inflation. That's a very different environment from that which we've encountered over the past 2 years. The decision that National made going into the campaign and that our government has adhered to is that this was not the time for petrol price increases as was proposed by the previous government. However, as we look to the future, New Zealanders want us building the future, and that means building new roads, that means repairing existing roads, and that does take revenue to deliver. And so car users in the future, as has always been the case, will make a contribution to that through their petrol tax.
Would you like the Monetary Policy Committee to detail how different members voted, so to name the member and say how they voted and give explanations?
Well, in general, I'm in favour of more accountability and transparency in the way that the Monetary Policy Committee delivers its functions. I want to have the discussion on the specific question you're asking with the incoming Reserve Bank Governor, who will be putting her feet under the desk in a few short weeks, because I think there are opportunities to revisit the Monetary Policy Charter. I think it's appropriate I do that in discussion with the Reserve Bank.
Are there any other changes that you look to make to improve accountability and transparency?
Well, look, I think there may be a number of opportunities. I have made clear to the Reserve Bank Board and to the incoming Governor that as a general principle, I think as an institution, the Reserve Bank should be upfront, transparent, accountable, because that builds trust. And an institution of the importance of the Reserve Bank requires the trust of New Zealanders, and in general, I think openness supports that.
Is it a problematic thing if the Monetary Policy Committee is making decisions in a split manner or a non-unanimous manner?
Not at all. I think that reflects the reality that a number of these economic judgments are subjective and have information on both sides. I think it aids market participants and New Zealanders to understand the different factors that are being weighed up by individual committee members. And if you look around the world, it's very common for monetary policy committees to both record split votes and record the reasons for those. And that's not seen as a sign of any instability. It's again seen as a sign of being upfront, being accountable, being transparent.
So some of the committee members raised the point that cautious behaviour from businesses and households could actually slow down that recovery of domestic demand and sort of lead to a lower inflation number that was below that midpoint target. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Well, of course, the key thing there is that the Reserve Bank needs to target that midpoint of 2%, and if they thought that it was going lower than that, then they would have options about how they responded with monetary policy. I think there's two things. One, the Reserve Bank does reflect in its statement today that they seem to agree with my hypothesis that what we saw in the second quarter of this year was that the Trump tariff announcement did lead to precautionary behaviour both from businesses and households. It's also notable that the Reserve Bank is very definitive in its statement that it thinks the negative GDP number in the second quarter was overstated statistically, that they expect it to be adjusted, that while things were tough in the second quarter of this year, they weren't as bad as that headline number suggested in the first instance. I hope so. New Zealanders deserve relief. Many people have worked extraordinarily hard for many years post-COVID to help dig this country out of a very difficult economic period. And I want them to know that looking ahead, we're not going to have those astronomical price increases that characterised our economy in recent years. I want them to know that their mortgage will be more affordable when they go to refix it. I want potential first home buyers to know that they're buying a home in an environment where interest rates are lower and they'll be able to service that debt more easily. And I want New Zealanders to know that the growth that our country needs is absolutely here now and going to get faster in the months ahead. And what that means is more jobs for our fellow New Zealanders. It means more opportunities, it means greater incomes, and it means households will have more opportunities to get ahead. That's the news I want people hearing going into Christmas, so I hope they hear it today.
Labour put out a press release saying that the Reserve Bank is doing the work that Mr Phillips can't. What do you say to that?
I say that Labour probably need to go back and study some economics, because monetary policy and fiscal policy should work together to deliver a strong economy. Labour forgot that when they were in government. They actively used fiscal policy against the Reserve Bank, spending up with wild abandon in a way that forced the Reserve Bank to hike interest rates ever higher to try and get a lid on inflation. And it's notable that during Labour's time in office, inflation got completely out of control for an extended period, hiking prices across the economy that is still hurting New Zealanders today. Hiking interest rates across the economy that has had a hugely constraining effect on growth and job creation. So I won't be taking any advice from Labour until they acknowledge the mistakes they made in the past that helped lead New Zealand into what has been an extremely difficult period for many people.
Is it concerning though that
And why don't they just celebrate some good news for once?
is it concerning though that our economy is so interest rate sensitive? We seem to be particularly sensitive to spikes and cuts, and do we need to, how do we fix that?
Well, I actually see it a different way, which is that our economy has been sensitive to overly expansionary fiscal policy and has been sensitive to a period of very high inflation. Interest rates have done their job in managing that, as orthodox economic theory would tell you they should. And what we see is that with those lower interest rates, people do have more discretionary cash available in both their business and household budgets, and that is leading to the increase in economic activity that you'd expect. Actually, this is about New Zealanders making decisions that when prices are more stable and when their debt servicing costs are lower, they can afford to do more. And as National looks to the future, we're not prepared to just sit back and say, oh well, we've fixed the basics, inflation's lower, growth's returning, interest rates are lower. Our task is also to build a better future, and that's why, for example, we want to increase contributions to KiwiSaver. That's why, for example, we want to replace the Resource Management Act to allow more of our natural resources and land to be developed. It's why we're going for housing growth, so that there can be more housing supply in the future to respond to increases in demand without the sort of housing asset price bubbles we saw under the last government. So I'm confident that with this platform, we can make a lot more progress for New Zealanders. And you haven't even heard me on the list of other things we're doing in our schools to lift education achievement, the things we're doing in our health system to adopt new digital tools to deliver better services to patients, the things that we're doing in our social welfare system to make sure that we have a strong social safety net, but also we are encouraging people into work. So we need to fix the basics first. Today's statement, I think, does put a line in the sand. It says those basics are under control, now let's build the future.
Minister, how worried are you about inflation ticking up further? So the banks obviously said that, the outlook is balanced for inflation, but how worried are you about that?
Look, I'm not, because what the Reserve Bank say in the statement is that they see the risks as very balanced and they have opportunities to respond to any spike in inflation that occurred. They're actually forecasting that inflation has been at its highest point and comes down from here. They're forecasting that it will be in band, on target, and that's where it needs to be.
Is Andrew Costa still the head of the session this morning?
Yes, that is a matter for the Public Service Commissioner to comment on.
Is it moving quickly enough? It's been more than 2 weeks.
I understand that the Public Service Commissioner is conducting a thorough employment process. What is important is that the law is followed.
Are you happy with that?
Well, I want a clear outcome, and I want it done in a way that creates the least risk to taxpayers.
And is it being done in that way currently?
On the information and advice I have had, yes.
Would it be disappointing to you if the hospital was to receive a payout as part of that next agreement?
It would be a matter for the Public Service Commissioner to ensure that any employment decision is done in a way that is fully open to public accountability and scrutiny, and that, in my mind, that means that I shouldn't prejudge the outcome of the investigation that is currently underway, and so therefore it would be inappropriate for me to comment on your hypothetical question.
But if there was a number, would you like to see that number released into?
Look, I'm afraid that your question asks me to prejudge an employment process. It asks me to assume an outcome, and that it would create legal risk for me to do that. And what I mean by legal risk is the potential for New Zealand taxpayers to be sued, which could cost an awful lot of money, and I don't want to make statements today that put New Zealand taxpayers in that position.
On the Regulatory Standards Act, why are you talking about potentially repealing legislation that the government passed just 2 weeks ago?
Well, we passed that legislation as a coalition government of three parties due to a commitment in the coalition agreement with the ACT Party. It's also the case that going into the next election, every political party will have the opportunity to state its position on that Act. That's more than a year from now. We will have had an opportunity then to see how it is operated in practice, to see if the many concerns raised by a range of New Zealanders about it have come to pass, and it's appropriate that National take a position into the election that reflects what we think is best for the governing of New Zealand. Our job is not to prop up the policies of other parties. National's job is to put forward the policies we think are best for the country, and so therefore, if we think it is necessary to repeal that Act, we have to reserve the right to take that to the election as a campaign policy. We're not ruling it out, we haven't made a decision, but it's not impossible.
But if you think it's possibly legislation that's going to have that sort of deleterious effect on New Zealand that some submitters, many submitters suggested it would, surely you would have just said to David in the negotiations, sorry, we're not going to, you didn't vote for the treaty.
We've delivered a strong, stable, three-way coalition. And a large part of how we have ensured that is sticking to our coalition commitments. We had a crystal clear coalition commitment to act on this matter, and we have kept it. And we've done that in the interests of stable government, and New Zealanders have made clear to us they do not want this term of government to be one of a government that can't make progress because there are coalition battles. And I think it's actually a significant achievement of the Prime Minister that we've seen such good progress on the coalition agreements, such stability in the government, and sometimes, yes, that requires compromise, that requires sacrifice, and it shouldn't be a surprise to you to know that National absolutely did not campaign on this Act becoming law. It was not our policy, it was ACT's policy. So I don't think that that then means that National needs to take any particular position going into the next campaign.
So anything in the ACT Party coalition agreement you may repeal next week?
Well, obviously, we will have to take every policy and issue on a case-by-case basis as we put our manifesto together. It's the case that many of the initiatives we have progressed as three parties are policies that National is very proud of, and I won't go through a case-by-case today, but as specific questions come up, we will form positions on them.
How advanced is the discussion in the National Party about repealing or campaigning to repeal the British standards bill?
That's not a discussion we have had in caucus yet.
Could we talk about the supermarkets announcement? Why should people in Northland and Southland all across the country, across Christchurch, be held in counterclaim cities?
Well, that's not what that announcement is about. It's about the fact that right now, if you were a new supermarket chain wanting to enter New Zealand, the rules for the building of your supermarket could vary completely across the different cities you wanted to open in. That creates time waste, it creates complexity, delay and cost. And so one of the steps we're taking to fast-track new supermarkets is to say, look, if you want to open multiple supermarkets, one-stop shop, same rules, same process, we'll take some of the faff out, because if you want to open a competitive new supermarket in New Zealand, we want you. The welcome mat is being rolled out. Why? Because we want more affordable food prices for New Zealanders, and we are convinced that greater competition would put more pressure downwards on food prices in New Zealand. The big duopoly needs competitors, and our government is getting every regulatory barrier out of the way to assist with that.
Is it still the case that a one supermarket any other competitor would be able to access this? And does that mean that Christchurch needs to go and visit that town?
No, I think you're confusing two things. There's the resource consent process, for which we have put a fast-track mechanism in through the Fast Track Act. The announcement today relates to the building consent process. So that is about whether or not the structure in the building meets the building code, and rather than having that assessed on a council-by-council basis, we're asking Christchurch Council to do all of those so it's done in a uniform and predictable way. That is different from the resource consent process, which is what I think your question refers to.
Why Christchurch City Council?
Well, the Ministry for Business went through a selection process in which some other councils indicated they might be willing to take that role. They assessed the various councils against a range of criteria and ultimately decided that Christchurch had the combination of proven experience, the capacity to do it, and we're going to be able to deliver that in an efficient way.
Minister, what do you think of the
I think the only person calling it that is you.
Pivoting back to the OCR, how do you think today's decision sort of paves the way for the new incoming governor will make their first decision as well, being on the committee in February, and I guess as well this is Christian Hawkesby's last?
Yes, I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge Christian Hawkesby as I have done in the past, and I'm sure will have the opportunity to do in the future. He has done a commendable job during his time in the governor's seat, and in particular has paid close attention to providing a strong transition for the incoming governor. And I think what she can look forward to, what Dr. Brayman can look forward to, is coming into a bank that has delivered on its mandate, that is ensuring New Zealand has low stable inflation, that is managing its functions much better than it has in the past, and that is really committed to being better in the future. And so I think she can see that across the organisation there are many very talented and capable individuals, and with strong leadership they'll perform even better for New Zealanders in the future.
In pulling together this OCR announcement and polling, how much optimism does this give you going into the election that Petrol possibilities now and should get you growth?
Well, I've always said that real results don't come overnight. It would have been pretty easy at quite a few junctures over the past couple of years to say, you know what, this is hard, here's a sugar hit, I'm going to give you a helicopter cost of living payment. But I knew, and our government knew, that actually all that would have done is delayed and deepened the pain. And so we've taken a responsible course of ensuring that we're being disciplined about our spending, getting those basics in place so we have a platform for enduring growth and higher living standards for New Zealanders. And what I'm hopeful about is that we can see that that is delivering the results that we promised. We now have a big job ahead of us to sustain those results. We cannot take them for granted, as some political parties would, and then to build a much better future through the sorts of reforms we're progressing, whether that's cutting through the complexity of regional government, replacing the Byzantine Resource Management Act, going for housing growth, improving education standards, building KiwiSaver. Those are the policies that in the future will ensure this is a more resilient economy. I think the choice will be clear at next year's election. Do we really want to go back to the Labour Party ways of excessive spending, excessive tax, excessive inflation, and go through all of this again? Or do we want to bank the gains of what have been 2 very hard years for many New Zealanders and then build a better future? And I think many New Zealanders will see that the latter choice is the better one.
Is the Prime Minister?
Yes. Because I think he's clear about what he means and what he says, and generally speaks with clarity. He, like me, is capable of the odd misstep. He, like me, sometimes says the wrong word in the wrong order. That's the nature of being a figure in the public eye who is speaking many more words in response to journalists than most New Zealanders could ever imagine.
Did he make a mistake yesterday in suggesting that he didn't care if national MPs lost their seats?
I don't think that that was what he meant to suggest at all. I think the context for that question was clear, which was that he was rejecting speculation that the polls that exist today would predict the result at the next election. He was doubling down on our party's commitment to grow our vote from where it currently is and our conviction that we can do that. It's absolutely the case that we want every single MP in our caucus who wants to return to Parliament after the next election to be back there with us, and more besides, because we have some talented candidates across this country who would be great representatives for New Zealanders, and that means growing our party vote so more national MPs can be in Parliament. The Prime Minister is absolutely committed to that task, and we know that every minister, every backbencher is on that job with us.
So, Minister, just to clarify, on this sort of leadership question, it's your view that it's been a media leader?
Well, you used a particular adjective, I forget what it is now, and it's not an adjective that I'd use. Hey, since I became the Deputy Leader with Chris Luxon, actually since I became an MP, I would love to find a 6-month period in which the media didn't engage in some speculation about the National Party leadership. That has been a recurring theme, and that's just something we've come to expect. We have to take that in our stride, because actually our job is not to get down in those weeds with you. Our job is to stay focused on the task ahead, delivering for New Zealanders, strengthening the economy, making policy reforms. And if we were to engage every time in your level of speculation about what the Chatterati are saying, then we wouldn't be doing what's best for New Zealanders, and that needs to be our focus.
Or alternatively, could it just mean that people haven't liked the National Party leader since you've been in the seat?
Well, as I said yesterday in an interview, there are many things that you can look for in a Prime Minister. For me, clarity, strength, focus, resolve, the ability to manage a team are very important attributes, and our Prime Minister has them in spades. You can also look for popularity. No doubt that's nice to have. But popularity does not necessarily translate to a better New Zealand. And if you want an example of that, have a look at the reign of Jacinda Ardern. She had high popularity ratings, but what did she deliver for New Zealand? Well, we were left with a mess. And so I would say that simply judging things on a particular popularity score one day or the next is not the right way to think about the leadership this country needs.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.